My business partner stole $2.3 million from our company and blamed it all on me. I spent 8 months building the perfect trap. The day I found out, I was sitting across from him at our regular Thursday lunch. He was telling a story about his weekend, laughing at his own punchline, cutting his steak. I was nodding and smiling and thinking about the folder I'd found that morning in a filing cabinet he thought I'd never opened. The folder that showed me, in 11 years of friendship and 7 years of partnership, exactly who he was. I smiled the whole way through lunch. I paid the bill. I drove home and I sat in my driveway for a long time. Then I made a decision that changed everything. I decided not to do anything. Not yet. My name is Daniel. I'm 44. 7 years ago, I went into business with my best friend of 11 years, a man named Sean. We'd met in our 20s, working at the same tech company, bonded over long hours and bad coffee, and the shared belief that we could build something better ourselves. When we finally did it, left our jobs, pooled our savings, started a software consulting firm from a spare bedroom in my house, it felt like the natural conclusion of a friendship that had always been heading somewhere. The business did well, better than well, honestly. Within 3 years, we had 18 employees, a handful of significant clients, and revenue that had cleared 7 figures. We complemented each other in the way that good partnerships do. I handled the technical side and client relationships. Sean handled operations and finances. I trusted him with the money completely, the way you trust someone you've known for 11 years, the way you trust a person who was at your wedding and knew your father before he passed and has your emergency contact saved in his phone. I trusted him completely. That is the sentence this story turns on. I found it on a Thursday morning in March. Sean was traveling, a client meeting in Austin 2 days. I was in our shared office looking for a contract from 2019 that a client had asked about, which I knew we kept in the physical filing cabinet because Sean was old-fashioned about certain things. The folder was misfiled, tucked into the wrong section behind a divider labeled vendor contracts. It had no label of its own. I almost put it back without opening it. I opened it. Inside were printed bank statements, not our company accounts, an account I didn't recognize, at a bank we didn't use. The statements went back 4 years. The deposits were regular, substantial, and the amounts matched, with a precision that took me a moment to understand and then hit me like something physical. Transfers from our operating account that I'd seen in our books categorized as vendor payments and infrastructure costs. I stood in that office for a long time. Then I did something I'm still a little proud of. I took photos of every page with my phone, put the folder back exactly where I'd found it, same angle, same position in the drawer, and went back to my desk and sat down and opened my laptop and started working as if nothing had happened. At 12:30, I met Sean for our regular Thursday lunch. He ordered the steak. He told a story about the Austin client that made him laugh. I smiled and nodded and paid the bill and drove home. I sat in my driveway for 40 minutes. Then I called my attorney. Her name is Vera. She has been my personal attorney for 6 years, and she is the kind of person who speaks in complete, unhurried sentences and never uses 2 words where one will do. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "How much do you want?" I asked what she meant. She said, "There are 2 ways to handle this. The first way is fast. You confront him, you involve authorities immediately, it becomes public, it's messy and uncertain, and he has time to move things around before anyone can stop him. The second way takes longer, but it gives you control of every variable. Which do you want?" I said I wanted control of every variable. She said, "Then don't change anything. Not your behavior, not your access to accounts, not your relationship with him. Go to work on Monday, have lunch on Thursday, act like the person who hasn't seen that folder. Can you do that?" I said I could do that. She said, "I'll need a forensic accountant." What followed was 8 months of the most demanding performance of my life. Vera brought in a forensic accountant named Paul, who spent the first month going through 7 years of company financials with the specific patience of someone who has done this many times and understands that the truth is always in the details. What Paul found was not $2.3 million. It was $2.3 million. I had estimated from the folder that it might be somewhere in that range. Paul confirmed it to within a few $1,000s. He also found something I hadn't seen in the folder, a pattern of documentation that had been constructed carefully and over time to make several of the largest transfers appear to be authorized by me. Sean hadn't just been taking money. He'd been building a paper trail that pointed at me. I sat with that for a while. 11 years. He'd known me for 11 years and had spent some portion of those years constructing a version of events in which I was the one who would go to prison if anything unraveled. I went to work the next day. I had Thursday lunch with Sean. He told a story about his son's baseball game. I laughed in the right places. While I was doing that, Vera was doing several things simultaneously. She was working with Paul to document and preserve every piece of evidence in a form that would be usable in both civil and criminal proceedings. She was consulting with a white-collar crime attorney named Morrison, who she trusted and who she brought onto the team in month 3. She was also, and this was the part I hadn't anticipated, but that turned out to be the most important piece, quietly making contact with 2 of our major investors who had been told by Sean over the past 18 months a version of the company's financial situation that was not accurate. The investors were not happy. They were, in fact, the kind of unhappy that comes with its own legal team. By month 6, our case had become 3 cases running in parallel: the forensic documentation of the funds, the false paper trail Sean had built against me, and the investor situation. Vera coordinated all 3. I went to work every day. I had Thursday lunch every week. In 7 years of partnership, Sean had never once looked at me across that table and seen anything other than his trusting, oblivious business partner. He didn't see it in month 7 either, or month 8. He saw it on a Tuesday morning in November. I asked Sean to come in early. I told him I wanted to go over some Q3 numbers before the rest of the team arrived. This was normal. We did this occasionally. He came in at 7:30 with 2 coffees from the place down the street the way he always did and sat across from me at the conference table. Vera was in the room. Morrison was in the room. Paul was in the room. 2 people from the investors' legal team were in the room. Sean looked at all of them and then looked at me. And I watched his face do the calculation, taking in each person, understanding what each one represented, arriving at the sum. He put the coffees down very carefully. I slid the folder across the table. Not the original, a copy, one of many that existed in several locations he didn't know about. I said, I found this in March. I've spent 8 months making sure I understood everything that's in it and everything that's connected to it. Vera is going to explain what happens next. Vera explained what happened next. She spoke for about 12 minutes. Sean didn't say anything during those 12 minutes. He looked at the folder. He looked at the people in the room. Once, near the end, he looked at me, a long look that I couldn't fully read and that I've thought about many times since. Not remorse exactly, something more complicated than that. When Vera finished, Morrison outlined the criminal exposure. The investors' attorneys outlined their position. Then everyone stopped talking, and the room was very quiet. Sean said, finally, "Can I have a moment?" Vera said he could have 5 minutes. He stepped out. I don't know what he did in those 5 minutes. When he came back, he sat down and said he wanted to discuss terms. The negotiation took 3 weeks. I won't detail every piece of it because some of it is still under legal agreement. What I will tell you is that the outcome included full restitution of the $2.3 million, structured over 4 years with personal assets as collateral. It included Sean's complete exit from the company, his shares, his role, his name on the door. It included a formal retraction of the documentation he'd constructed to implicate me, signed and notarized and held by Vera in a form that would be immediately available if he ever attempted to use any version of that narrative again. And it included a cooperation agreement with the investor situation that resolved that matter without it becoming a public proceeding. He did not go to prison. That was my decision, and I've had to make peace with it, which took longer than I expected. Vera and Morrison both told me the criminal case was strong and I could pursue it. I chose not to, for reasons that are complicated and personal, and that I'm still not entirely sure I can articulate. Partly because a long public trial would have damaged the company and the 18 people who worked there and had nothing to do with any of this. Partly because the restitution and the exit and the formal record felt like enough. Partly, and I want to be honest about this, because I had known him for 11 years, and some part of me, even after everything, couldn't entirely let go of that. I don't know if that was the right call. I made it, and I live with it. The company is still running. It's doing better, actually, without the financial drain of what Sean was doing. The numbers look different. I brought in a new operations director, a woman named Christine who has been in the role for 2 years and who I trust in the specific, carefully constructed way that I trust people now, which is different from how I trusted before, but is also, I think, more honest. I haven't spoken to Sean since the Tuesday in November. He left the city about a year after the settlement. I heard this through a mutual contact and did not seek further details. What I think about most when I think about this is not the money or the legal process or even the Tuesday morning. What I think about is March, the Thursday lunch after I found the folder, the way I sat across from him and smiled and laughed at his story and paid the bill, the way I drove home and made a decision in a driveway to be patient. Patience is not a natural state for me. I'm someone who solves problems directly and immediately. Choosing to wait, choosing to build something careful and complete instead of reacting, was the hardest thing I did in this entire situation. It was also the only thing that gave me control of the outcome. The folder is still in my filing cabinet. I kept it, the original, the one I found misfiled behind the vendor contracts. I'm not sure exactly why. Maybe because it's a reminder that the most important information is sometimes in the places nobody thinks to look. Maybe because it's a reminder of what 8 months of patience built. Maybe just because some things you keep, not to hold on to them, just to remember that you survived them. If this story hit you, the patience part especially, that's the one worth sitting with. Reacting fast feels good for about 30 seconds. Building something airtight feels good for the rest of your life. If you made it to the end, thank you. Drop a like, subscribe if you want more, and I'll see you in the next one.